So now that I kind of explained why I think it's important to also be lean when we talk about the team and not only about the product artifacts, I'm going to start slowly going into the how. For today, I prepared 10 tips that I find fundamental for every leader, whether you are a founder of a startup, of a manager, like any kind of leadership role that you are in, and any kind of business, because I'm talking about software, but it can be applied to any kind of business that wants to go lean and launch while minimizing the time to the market, and also all kinds of resources from financial to just effort and headspace as well. How we can do this while leveraging the freelance power, let's say the freelance power, the gig economy, talent on demand, expertise on demand. There's this terminology now going on. I think soon we're going to land on one term that everybody understands and that conveys the right message. So the first tip I want to start with is that as leaders, we need to get relaxed about hiring. As I already mentioned, it used to be something that people only go to as a last resort, but nowadays it actually became that easy that whenever we need let's say a piece of somebody's brain, we can get it on demand easily by doing a couple of clicks and using our credit card. There are freelance marketplaces, and yes, they do charge commissions. Many people mention this, but I'm happy to pay for this service because it's amazing, the service they offer, at least the ones that are really already big and successful, because it's easy to browse, it's easy to find people, it's easy to trust based on the reference system. It's easy to avoid all the legalities with contracts and payments internationally, etc., etc. You already have the templates, everything is a couple of clicks away, and it's easy later on to have the transparency while working with the freelancers, the whole team together. So we are not so scared from hiring. And whenever we feel that we need either just somebody to have an extra pair of hands, or we just need different skills, or we just need an opinion, like it can be a 1-hour call, we can just go ahead and start collaborating with new freelance expert and get, as I sometimes say, like new piece of brain in our team on demand. This is super important in the beginning of the project as well. And this is where my clients usually get super surprised when I tell them that we need more people in the beginning, because the usual ways you have a small team and then you start growing. It used to be even common that people they get proud saying that, for example, they grew their business from 5 to 15 employees in a year, because that used to be a parameter, like you're growing your full-time employees team. But nowadays, if you're not talking about full-time employees, actually, very often it's in the initial stage when your team is bigger, because that is the moment when you are making all those important decisions. For example, if you want to decide on the technology stack you're going to use, this is something you want to know in the beginning. The software architecture, that's something that you want to know in the beginning. How are you going to go ahead and hire developers if you're not even sure which technology is the right one, and what kind of CVs you are actually looking for? So you need to hire a software architect. In my experience, I usually work up to 5 hours, which is like a very minimal amount of time with a software architect, which is more than enough for me to land on this initial decision, like which tech stack we're going to use, which like high-level architecture we're going to have, and then I can go ahead and talk to the potential programmers on the project, etc. Sometimes it's important to talk to a legal expert, for example, if your product is about to disrupt a market that is very, very much regulated, right? So it's important to know that you're not doing something wrong from the very beginning. Sometimes it's also important to talk to the domain knowledge. For example, you are in the space of education. Maybe you can just have some chat with people who are in the education sector, just a couple of hours of consulting, just to make sure that you're on the right track. So this is all that's happening in the beginning. So sometimes it seems that in the initial phase, we have a team of maybe more than 10 people that we are collaborating at the moment. And then later on, when we are already focused on the development only, the team goes back to a smaller number of people who are doing the actual implementation. So there is this paradox of having more people in the beginning, but it's something that we can do nowadays because it became that easy to hire, contract, and collaborate with. Another example is is branding. Usually the startups think we don't have the resources, we don't have the time for a thing like branding. It's something that's going to happen somewhere down the road when we are ready to launch. We're not thinking about this right now. But actually, if you think that you can get a 1 week of auditing by a branding strategist easily, it can help in the beginning, because it's so much easier that you already start with your team understanding the mission of your product, with having a nice signature in your email when you're approaching the investors, using the logo in your UI, etc., and not changing it later on. I mean, it's possible, but why change if you can start already with a good brand name, and if it's not so difficult to get it from the beginning. Talking about this ease of hiring, yes, like if we talk about the practicalities, it became super easy, but still, there are many things we need to know. One of the important things is to know this order and the order of experts you're hiring throughout the project, and also the arrangements, because of different type of arrangements with freelancers that you want to have with different roles in your team. This is quite a long list of roles, so I'm not going to go into the details. I have these resources in my blog post and a chapter in the book, but just I'm going to give a couple of examples. I think I already mentioned that that it sure makes sense to work with a software architect before you're hiring the software developers. It makes sense to work with a branding strategist before you start developing any kind of graphics and then the UI. I definitely recommend, even for a super small startup with one programmer, one part-time programmer only, even to have a quality assurance expert. This quality assurance expert probably won't have many things to test, but you can get them for 2 hours per week and still make sure that the quality of your code is right from the very beginning. And then we have these arrangements that we can talk about. For some roles, it's important and suitable to have a long-term full-time arrangement. So it's almost like a full-time job. And that's, for example, the tech lead of your project, of your software development, like a core developer. For some people, you would like to have like short arrangement, but with a heavy workload. It can be, for example, a designer that's going to spend 1 month of full-time work to develop the mockups to start with, for example. And then there are the roles that are very part-time, but you really want them to be long-term with you. As I mentioned, for example, quality assurance expert, because you need this person to really know your project inside and out. But then again, there is not enough work for them to stay for more than a couple of hours per week. But it's important to maintain this relationship for a long period of time. Also, if you're using, for example, a virtual assistant, again, it's very important to have somebody who has the same tone of responding to the emails similar to yours, etc. And you want this person to be with you long term, even if it's very part-time basis. Then you have this arrangement of having an expert available to you on demand. I suggest this with software architect, for example. That's somebody that in the beginning, as I mentioned in my experience, is usually up to 5 hours of consulting that this kind of experts would provide. But it's important that this person stays available to you whenever you are thinking about making some major change, because they know the core of your product, so they don't need to go again into learning about your idea and what you have. So they are the ones who suggested the initial solution. So it's good if you keep them in the loop. If you send them the information about what's happening in your product, you keep them in the loop and ask them to be around and stick around on demand when you need additional hours of their consulting, when you're planning new changes, new releases, etc. So there's different kind of arrangements suitable for different roles. And as I mentioned, I have full list of those in the resources that you can check out later. But this is what's important. Yes, it's easy to hire, like the practicalities are taken care of by the freelance platforms. But as leaders, we also need to take care about these things and think in advance, how do we want our team to have the dynamics. Another thing that we need to think about is the onboarding. The traditional onboarding procedures that used to be common and probably still are common in corporate culture, in corporate environment, simply do not pay off here. Having like 2 weeks of orientation period, going around the company, learning about the history, all the departments, etc. Spending 2 weeks doing that, if this person is gonna stay with you for 3 weeks, simply doesn't pay off. So this onboarding needs to be super efficient. In the same time, because we do have this core team that is with us long term, right? We need to protect this team. Imagine this transient team, people coming in and out. Sometimes they're even called flash teams. I think that the US military came up with this term, having flash teams. Imagine this core team having the interruptions all the time. All the time somebody new is coming, they're asking more or less the same questions, etc., etc. So you as a leader of this kind of flash team, flexible team, transient team, freelance team, you need to think about this on board being super efficient. The people need to come in and hit the ground running because they are not staying for such a long period of time. So this time needs to be very well used, and also in order to protect the current team. So what I usually do is I prepare kind of a kickoff documentation, very brief, with all the details about the company project and also all the credential for the tools and platforms we use, etc. About our workflow, when do we have our bi-weekly meetings, etc. I prepare everything for the person when they join, but also it wouldn't mean much writing this document describing our work processes if these work processes were not already in place. And that's also one of the common mistakes with the startups, because they start as a small operation and they think this is an overhead, this is something they don't need. If it's only me as a founder and one more programmer or two more people with us, we're gonna just jump on a call, exchange a couple of messages on WhatsApp or Telegram or something, and the things start going. But then we have a huge problem because our team won't scale. The people who join down the road, they won't be able to understand what we've been working on. So from the very beginning, whichever tool and workflow you decide to use, I use Scrum and Agile, maybe you're going to use Kanban or something else, whichever tool you decide to use, whether it's Monday.com, Jira, Basecamp, Asana, etc., Trello, but start using it from the very beginning and start putting the information in the context, not in the long chats, threads, in emails. The information gets buried there. All the information should be in those tickets, cards, issues, however they are called in different tools. The information should be there from the very beginning. Even when you are 2 people on the project and everything is super simple, it needs to be there, because otherwise the new team members simply won't be able to join efficiently and without interrupting the current team. Talking about these team management techniques, in my experience, asynchronous collaboration is a lifesaver. It's really a game changer. Imagine that we are distributed, we live in different time zones. For example, today I woke up at 4 o'clock, but that's not something that is possible to do on a daily basis and still stay productive. So that's one of the problems. Another problem is the diversity and inclusion, because we want to have people who have different life and family situations, so they're not available at any time or day at night. We want to have freelancers that work on multiple projects. And why do we want to have them? Not only because we are not, it's not possible for us to employ them full time, but also because it's nice for them to go on the other projects and learn and come back with this new knowledge. So we want to have freelancers who work on multiple projects as well. So all this together makes it impossible for people to be online at the same time. That's why we need the asynchronous collaboration. Now, after what happened with the pandemic and many companies going remote overnight without a proper plan, without sufficient knowledge, what's happening is that many managers are simply trying to replicate the office environment. So they're trying to oblige their team members to be online from 9 to 5, always at the same time, to jump on a call ad hoc or like on daily basis, etc. And this is not what we want with the remote work, because then we are limiting the possibilities of the remote work, the possibilities to work with the global talent, the possibilities to have people working on multiple projects, etc. So the key here is this asynchronous collaboration. In my case, for example, I usually work with the teams in a way that we have one meeting in 2 weeks. That's just enough for us to convey the teamwork retrospective, etc., and just like build a little bit of culture, see each other face to face. But apart from that, everybody works on their own terms. We have tools as bots in Slack for daily stand-up, etc., etc. And as I said, it's always this information in the context. It's also super important for this another thing that's been popping up lately, and it's called burnout. And it happens a lot because of people being obliged to have this green dot next to their name in the chat almost all day long and being always available for answering questions. Everybody should be should have the possibility to have a break for half an hour without being with this green dot all the time. And this is what the synchronous collaboration helps us do. In order to achieve this synchronous collaboration, there are a couple of techniques. Again, I have resources for that. I'm not going to go into all these details, but what's actually important is to have good specifications. And that's something that is actually the foundation on any good management, remote or not. It's just that it's much easier to get away without it in the office when you can always just talk to a colleague and explain things. But maybe long term, it's not even sustainable. But in remote work and that synchronous collaboration is crucial. So what I usually do, as we have 2 weeks iterations, I prepare the specifications at least 2 days in advance so that people can analyze, ask questions, we clarify everything. When the implementation starts, usually we don't have those blocking questions. So I don't have this feeling that if I'm offline for half an hour, another person is offline, that the project is on fire, that the whole team is blocked, that it's a problem that we are away. And this way, as I said, we can work in different time zones on multiple projects, avoid burnout, and actually leverage the remote work and the beauty of it, that we are actually have much more flexibility in our lives. I did have in the beginning situations when I worked on multiple projects, and we had those daily stand-ups. And for me, it was like, with one team, it was 11 p.m. With another team, it was 2 a.m. Basically, I was spending my day just sleeping, waking up for the calls that were supposed to set my focus for the day, that I was not even sure for which day it was anymore. Once I learned that this is not how we want our team members to live and work, I started truly believing in the asynchronous collaboration.
Tijana, can I ask a question here, because I think it's quite a good one. The point about, and it's come up in the chat now a couple of times, the point about, with this diversity and complexity of managing dynamic resourcing, how does one retain the skills? We've got the classic thing that the IP leaves the building when your people leave the building. Now this is even more amplified under these circumstances. Any thoughts on that?
The documentation is crucial. It's always something that people don't find so exciting, but it needs to be there, the documentation. Even, as I said, it sounds as a simple thing. The project is in the early stage. There are not so many things developed. The team is small. You still need to document everything. Even if you have 2 people on the team, you still need to document everything. And then also maintaining these relationships. I never think of people like, okay, now they're employees, they're not employees anymore, game over, we are done. We are, in my mind, always collaborators. So even if at this moment we are not actively working together, we are collaborators and we are somehow connected, whether it's some chat channel, some tool, or it's simply LinkedIn or whatever. We are somehow collaborators, and we should be able to get in touch when needed somewhere down the road. And we are all proud of the projects we've done together in the past, etc., etc. So there is also this human aspect of the professional relationships. But then there is this like good old documentation. It needs to be there. Also, one of the things I almost always run into when I join startups in the initial phases, because very often actually I join when the startup founder started by hiring a programmer. Usually it's this thing, like, I want to have a software product, so I'm going to hire a programmer and I'm going to tell them what I want. And then they run into all these problems that it doesn't scale, etc., etc. So then I join at this point, and one of the first questions I ask is, so like the code repository, the cloud hosting, all these accounts are on which email? And they usually say on the programmer's email. So I'm like, what if something happens, you won't have access to your code. So one of the first things you need to do is open a company email, not even your personal email, because the people using this email will have to go into this inbox in order to click on the confirmation links, etc. You open a company email, you give it to the team members. They need to open certain accounts on Figma, GitLab, wherever, whatever we use, right? And then whatever happens, you as the founder, you have the access to your accounts. Even if the passwords are forgotten, you can always reset, etc. You can reach out to support, but you have the main account. So this is one of the things that people also don't think about in the beginning, and then yeah, they can run into troubles. I'm not following the chat. Is there something else, Greg, that we can talk about
that's good for now. I'll just add Liesl Marie's point about the contracting and service level agreements being kind of dynamic as well, which is a challenge, and particularly in the archaic legal framework that we have in South Africa and I guess other parts of Africa. But I think that's something we need to put some focus on, working out how we can work through that. So carry on.
Yes, just a note about that. Yes, for sure, the bureaucratic systems, they're not keeping up with these changes. They are super outdated, but the freelance platforms help a lot, because then you can have all these things taken care of by the platform. They have these kinds of security with escrow accounts for the payments, etc. And then the freelancers can do whatever they need to do with the taxes in their own country, and the platform is issuing the invoices. So there is this thing. There is also, like, recently I was on a podcast by a company called Deal, D-E-E-L. So they're not a freelance platform. It's not a place for you to find a freelancer. But for example, they arrange the payments where you can pay the whole team at once, and also all these kinds of like international chaotic situations, how you can arrange the contract, etc., the legal issues between different countries. So they not provide access to freelancers. They're not a freelance platform. They're solely focusing on solving the legal and payment issues between different countries. So I haven't used them because I only learned about them like 10 days ago or something. But I plan to take a look, and I'm sure that there are other solutions as well, because people are recognizing this issue. It's becoming very difficult to operate internationally with all these outdated bureaucratic systems.
So Tijana, there are more questions, but I think we'll hold them over until you finish with the how to manage and leverage. If that's
okay.
And just to everybody, there's some great questions being asked. We are going to share some resources in the chat with you as well, with some links and so on. Thanks, Tijana.
Thank you, Liesl. Yes, going back to the tips, we are somewhere midway. As a leader, as I mentioned, you are always trying to adjust your team with the goals of your next iteration. So I gave this example of UX. For example, this is our bottleneck. The users are not able to find all these amazing features we have. So we decided that the focus of the next iteration is going to be the UX. So we want maybe not even to hire a new UX expert. Maybe we already have them on the team, but we just want them to have an increased workload in the next month, for example. But what happens? We need to announce this in advance, because these people work on the other projects as well in the meantime. And this happens over and over again, that when you need somebody, they're not available. So you as a leader always need to think a step ahead, and already notify the people that you want to work with, for example, with an increased workload, etc., or they are with you on demand, etc. So you need to notify them in advance. It sounds simple, but I also see this all the time as a common mistake, that comes Monday and then the person you want is not available. Well, nobody notified them right in advance, so that they can find some time. So this is super important. So we are talking again about this lean approach, agile approach, sprints, iterations, build, measure, learn. And there is this moment when we want to have the review of our product, depending on the stage. Sometimes it's just some internal testing. Sometimes it's already with beta users. Sometimes it's already with existing customers that are sending us feedback, complaints, or any kind of survey results, right? So based on these product reviews, we can adjust our team, meaning it can be the existing team, but we just adjust the workload, or we find somebody to help us and when we need extra pair of hands, or maybe we are just confused, we're not sure how to react on the feedback, and we just want some second opinion from some experts. So based on the feedback on the product review, we can see how we want to go about our team for the next iteration. Then based on the team work retrospective feedback, we do the same. I guess many people are familiar with the concept of teamwork retrospective because it's like a common ceremony in Agile, but if not, I'm just going to explain quickly. In its basic format, it's everybody saying what they think, in which area they think there is space for improvement, and what they think that the team has done really well and should keep on doing. This is not a moment to point fingers. It's nobody's fault. We are all discussing our teamwork as a whole team and trying to get better as the whole team. I'm going to give one example from my experience. We had a project where almost every implementation from the front-end development team was getting reopened for fixing multiple times. So on the team retrospective, we started discussing why is this happening. I mean, for sure, they're not doing it wrong on purpose. So they are simply not understanding what needs to be done because that particular product had very complicated UX behavior. So after this teamwork retrospective, we decided to hire a person who is doing videos, explanatory videos of the desired behavior. And we started including those videos in the specifications for the new features we were requesting from the team to develop. And actually that helped because most of the implementations were not getting reopened for fixing anymore because simply the development team was clear from the beginning what needs to be done and how. So this is one example how teamwork retrospective gave us an idea how we need to adjust our team. We got this new team member who was working for us like a couple of hours per week, providing these super useful videos, and it solved our problem. Teamwork retrospective, as I explained, this is this simple format, but there are also many creative ideas how you can make it more fun for your team. There are resources online for that. So you can also check it out as a leader and maybe just spice it up a little bit because it does get a little bit uncomfortable in the beginning because people feel a little bit like it's discussing who did something wrong, but it's definitely not about it. The question that Craig already mentioned, yes, it's the documentation. It's very often this feeling that it's an overhead, we are a small team, everything is super early stage, but even yourself can forget your own thoughts because you're busy, there's so many things going on, and in a couple of weeks you're not sure you had these 3 important points and now you only remember 2. I'm sure all of us experienced this so far. So it's really important to document everything, and then it's easy for the other people to join as well. And as I already mentioned to Craig, this keeping in touch with ex-collaborators is super important. So even if they are not actively working on the project at the moment, if you keep them in a loop, maybe you share some wins and successes with them. If you have new release or like new investor or new paying customer or something, you share this with them in a certain way. Maybe you have some community group or channel or something. You share this with them so that they still stay part of the story. Then they're going to be more willing to join when you need them, or maybe even just provide some answer to some question because maybe they still have some information that you're not sure about, etc. One thing that I find super important in this universe of freelancers, experts on demand, independent consultants, etc., is that we are all in the same time service providers and consumers. For example, I provide my services to my clients, but on behalf of my clients, I consume services of all these other experts that I mentioned, like programmers, designers, branding strategists, etc., for my own purposes, even though I'm like a single person solopreneur, or however you want to call this. I also work with, I think for sure, so far I've worked with more than 10 freelancers working on my book. For the book, I think there were 5 people. On my website, on my videos, even on my slides. These slides I done myself, but sometimes when I have more complex slides, I also have somebody helping me out, etc., etc. Well, this was also done by Lizelle partially, right? So even me, I consume the services of other freelancers a lot. So we are all in the same time providers and consumers in this network of talent on demand. And what I really love about this is that, in my opinion, the professional relationships became much more healthier. There is less and less of that thing that somebody is an employer and another person is an employee, and then this person is telling them you're supposed to show up at this time and do that and that. It's more about how do you usually approach this? What would you suggest as a next step? When would you be available to do this? And I think this is much healthier. Even the vocabulary is so much nicer. And we are all kind of collaborators. And then people feel more motivated to be creative, to be proactive, to stay in touch, even once they're not making money anymore in the project, but they want to be in touch and maybe join later down the road again. And even me, that I'm in a like leadership role, I always feel that I'm the one who is providing the service like any other service. And I even had validation of that idea when I was hired by teams of programmers. So not by a founder who has a team and he wants me to manage the team, but teams of programmers working on their own product, and I just wanted somebody to manage them, to sort out their workflow, to just be more efficient. So if somebody is paying you to manage them, so it means that you're providing this service. So you're not the ruler, the dictator, you're providing the service of being the leader and actually facilitating the collaboration of the rest of the team so that they can focus on their tasks. So all of us, no matter role, we are all service providers and consumers at the same time and collaborators. And once we get this professional relationship in this healthy way, in my opinion, I think then it's much easier to have this kind of company culture, let's say, even if everything is so flexible and transient, and remain in touch in long term, even when people are not actively working on the project anymore.